See, I want a church, as a pastor, I want to have church members that are in touch with God for themselves. And they don't wait till they get here to talk about God. They know God during the week. I know we've got some sounding brass and tinkling cymbals in the church. I'm speaking in general terms. I'm not going to start calling out no names. I'm speaking in general terms. And here's how we as pastors know. Because you come to church and you stood in church and you were so filled with what church gave you. But Saturday night, you took a picture and the picture does not resemble something or someone who should be in the position or the place that a saved person should be in. And you have the audacity to be bold enough to post it online as an announcement to the world that this is what I'm doing. But then you come back to church on Sabbath morning. Am I talking to somebody? You come back to church on Sabbath morning and the pretense starts all over again. Flipping the coin. Get them, pastor. Get them. They ought to know better. So should you. Because your desire to call out everybody else's sin in the church while neglecting the log that's in your own eye also excludes you from true worship and makes you a sounding brass and tinkling cymbal as well. What's the answer? We are at the end of time. You don't have the luxury of judging anybody else in the church. All you do is have an opportunity to strengthen your personal relationship with God so that you can be ready if he is to burst the clouds at any time. You ain't got time to worry about this one or that one. All you can do is pray for him, but stop judging everybody that comes through the door. And on the flip side, stop pretending to be something you're not. Let your nay be nay, and your yea be yea. Is God saying something serious to you today? He wants a people. And I'm being intentional, folks. I'm trying not to be too overexcited because I want you to be contemplative today. My father always told me that you never make a serious decision in life with the noise of revelry around you. It's always made in a quiet moment spent with God. Clyde will love Ardeen even when Ardeen doesn't look her best, because his love for Ardeen is not dependent upon the superficiality of her exterior. Y'all got to hear me. Clyde loves Ardeen because of what she has on the That's why when he wakes up beside her in the morning, he still decides to go back to bed with her that night, even though he knew what she looked like in the morning, because what she has on the inside shines brighter than what's on the outside, and what's on the inside is far more lovely than what's on the outside. So guess what? Coin a phrase from Pastor Anderson. Guess what? God doesn't care how good you look, Brother Coke, in that suit. He loves the fact that it looks nice, you have a nice yellow tie on, and your gray hair matches your suit. Loves that. You look good. As a matter of fact, if Sister Coke wasn't sitting beside you, somebody in this congregation would probably be looking at you right now saying, Because all they see is what's on the Bible says God doesn't look at what's on He looks at what's on because what He wants is what's on not what's on So while, yes, you put on your best to come before Him because He is the King of the universe. Let's stress that again. I'll come over here. Everybody looking? Over this side? Over this side? Put on your best to come to church because God is here and He is a king. But your exterior beauty is not what concerns you. It's the inside. And here is the only way God will listen to our worship, is if we have something that looks like Him inside of. Now you get it? Because if you don't have God inside of you, God ain't listening to you. As a matter of fact, my father once said to me that you could talk all you want. God's not listening, and the devil don't want to hear you either. Because you are sounding brass. You may be an instrument of worship or an instrument for worship, but are you an instrument of worship? An instrument for worship is put down and not used until somebody picks it up. Are you with me? But an instrument of worship doesn't need an instrument to worship because they are the instrument of worship. You need to be an instrument of worship. You need to have God in your spirit, in your soul. He needs to be the reason why you're here. You don't need to be here because only the good pastor is preaching. And when Pastor Nichols is preaching, you're gone. You need to be here regardless of who's preaching. Because God's love compels you to His presence. I'll finish here. But I want to give you an example. And I need everybody listening to me. I want to give you an example of what someone who has the love of God inside of them really looks like. Because then the question you have to ask yourself is, do I really love God? Do I have God's love? Or am I just here marking time? This is what it looks like. I'm pastoring in Boston. Had a young lady that came to the church, 23 years old at the time. Brilliant young lady. Brilliant. She had gone to college at 16. Finished by the time she was 20. She was now 23 and halfway through working on her doctorate. Brilliant. She was from Tennessee, but had transferred to Boston to live because she got an opportunity to work in a hospital close to Boston. She was living not too far from where my church was, Seventh-day Adventist all her life, and decided to come to our church. I'm telling you, Brother Grant, this was a young lady that any congregation would be proud to have in the family. You'd have been proud of her as a church. She had her head on straight. She had her education and was in the process of almost finishing it. She was going into the medical field. Beautiful. I'm talking about physically beautiful. Face beautiful. She had her own money. Didn't need no man to make her feel complete. She was the true definition of an independent young lady. And of course, she was well sought after, well desired. Many a man would come by the church, and they would see her, and they would like her, and they would want to talk to her. She was a smart girl. She grew up in a good home, Shawnee. She never had that sad story of no self-worth, that even though she had academic prowess, she had no social ability. She was smart. She knew what she wanted. Wasn't that she wasn't willing to give anybody the time of day, but she was particular about who she gave the time to. And I believe that some of our young people ought to be more particular about who they give their time of day to. Smart young girl. She would come to church. And at that time, our church was growing, becoming more exciting, things were happening. She would come to church and she would sit in the pew just like you folk, and she would praise and raise her hands and enjoy the service. And really, I mean, she was diligent. She wasn't one of those young people who only came to church for 11 o'clock. She was in church 9:30. She was in church for Sabbath school. She was participatory in what was going on. And she didn't just come to church for Sabbath school, she was prepared for Sabbath school. Yeah. This was a girl who literally had everything going for her. My father always said to me, son, rough seas make good sailors. The only time you know you are God's child is when there is opposition. And I'll never forget the day she came to me. She said, Pastor, I need to speak with you. I said, what's going on? She said, I have been diagnosed with an extremely rare form of leukemia. "23." I said, well, what's your plan? Well, I'm going to fight it. I'm going to pray. And we'll see what God has in store. I said, all right. She went through the process of going through leukemia. Or through chemotherapy, thank you. the nice wavy locks that she had that added to her beauty, gone. The beautiful body physique that she had withered. The skin and bone. And she kept coming to church for as long as she could. As long as she could. There came a point where she just couldn't come anymore because she was that weak. I'll go visit her in the hospital. You would expect to walk in and find somebody downtrodden. But she said, Pastor, I feel good today. Every day. Because I know physically it's rough, but I feel good. My spirit is good. Went on a Monday, Sister Griffiths. Look at her. The nurses informed me when I walked into the hospital room, she can no longer talk. So now she's breathing shallow. She looks like a shell of her former self. And I sat down by her bedside and I held her hand. You see, as a pastor, some of you, all you see is the glitz and glamour of being a pastor. You get to stand in front of people and talk, and everybody loves you. And there is a real side to being a pastor. I sat down by her bedside that Monday and I held her hand and I prayed, Sister Alexander. I prayed because I believe in a God, and I still believe in a God that even when the doctors say things will not get better, He can just breathe a word and you can just walk out of your sickness like Lazarus walked out of the grave. But this ain't one of those stories. That was Monday. Less than 24 hours, Sister Landon, just to show you how aggressive leukemia is. Less than 24 hours. I get a phone call. Pastor, come now. She's on her last. Arrive at the hospital and I rush up to the room. I walk in. There's 4 people in the room. Her mother, her father, a sister, and a cousin. They're in the room. They're just standing by. If somebody in this room does not know what it feels like to be in that moment, especially when it's one of your relatives, you feel so helpless because you're watching them slip and you know there's nothing you can do to stop it. She's shallow. And I don't know what impressed me. I got down right beside her ear and I leaned in close and I say to her, Maggie, if you can, is there anything that you want to say as your last word? She knew that the words destroyed this body, yet in my flesh worshiper. She had agape love. Because in spite of her circumstance, she never let go of the unchanging hand of God. And she slipped to peaceful rest in the arms of Jesus, with his name being the last word on her lips. Why are you here? Because if you have never really considered it, then you ought to thank God that there's still enough grace and still enough mercy to turn this thing around. In the morning, when I rise, give me Jesus. Just about the break of day, give me. Dark midnight was my cry, but give me. Lord, when I come to die, give me. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. In the morning, when I rise, in the morning, when I rise, in the morning, when I rise, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your story is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't need to know. God knows. God knows if you're being real or you're being fake. You can fool church members, but you can't fool him. And the whole point of coming into church is not to be in the presence of other church members, it's to be in the presence of God. You can't hide from God. Jonah tried. Couldn't do it. Can't hide from God. So I don't know what your circumstance and I don't know what your situation. But you want to make Jesus, I mean really, not just lip service, not so you can continue to be a sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal. I'm talking about really making some noise in your living for Jesus. Real noise. For Jesus. I appeal today to your heart and to your mind. If you've never made Jesus your choice before, make it your choice today. If you want to come and join me up here and dedicate yourself to a life with Jesus, come up here and say, Lord, I want to be an instrument of praise, not just an instrument for praise. Won't you step out from where you are and join me here and say, yes, Lord. Because if the same fate that befell my dear sister should befall you, would you keep the faith when life isn't that great? Will you keep the faith when things aren't the best? Because this is life, folks. Things could be good today and horrible tomorrow. But I thank God that he's a God in the good times and a God in the bad times. And you cannot afford not to make him your God. So will you make him your God today? That's all I'm asking. Will he be your God today? And if that is you, and you know, hey, I need to really dedicate myself to him. Come on. Come on.